So here we are starting on Monday, and I was reading some articles in the morning. I have this little list of articles that I want to read, and I just went through and chose a few. And the first one I read was Joan Didion's essay on Self-Respect, which was published in Vogue in 1961. Basically, she acknowledges the tremendous guilt that people are feeling, and what she's describing sounds a lot like what we would now call people-pleasing. She writes, "Every encounter demands too much, tears the nerves, strains the will, and the spectre of something as small as an unanswered letter arouses such disproportionate guilt that one's sanity becomes an object of speculation among one's acquaintances." And she says to remove this guilt, we need to have what she calls the, quote, great singular power of self-respect. I then read two other very short articles. Good conversations have lots of doorknobs, which I didn't think was particularly insightful, and I read this article on Anne of Green Gables as the patron saint of girls who asked too many questions, which I very much liked as somebody who loved Anne of Green Gables. Oh, also, my grandma had slept over that night, and here is Lola with her head on her lap, which was just the cutest thing. So then, this is a bit later, and I went outside to read some of Wintering, which was the book I was reading at the moment. I was about halfway through this book at the beginning of the day, and I thought there would be no better way to read this book than outside in the absolute freezing cold, because it is a book about winter after all. This is a nature writing memoir by Katherine May, and she has always lived a very busy life. You know, she's not allowed herself to slow down and look at the seasons. She's never had the chance to do that. And then one winter, after I think it's a period of sickness, she slows down for the winter and she engages in what she calls quote unquote wintering, like the act of wintering and the act of being in line with the seasons. This is so beautifully written. I can't even tell you how much I love this. Then this is later again, but I realised that this kind of did count as reading, which is why I'm including this. But I read a selection of Charlotte Perkin Gilman's letters. I do love reading in manuscript. I love reading letters in particular, and lots of archives will have facsimiles online of manuscripts so that you can actually read them. So I did that and also took a few notes and things as I was doing so. It just occurred to me that I didn't actually check in to say this, but I did then go on to finish Wintering by Katherine May in the evening before bed. But I just didn't film it, so pretend that there were clips here. Now here we are on Tuesday, and again I started by reading an article. This was an academic article though. It was called Enchanting Encounters in Ordinary Writing for Children, and it's kind of about memory of childhood literature. It was really good. I'm quite interested in things like this. It's Tuesday, and I didn't speak at all to camera yesterday, but I finished Wintering last night, which is one of the best books I've ever read. I think it might even be in my top 20 books. It's a beautiful, reflective book on winter and why winter is beautiful and important, and it stretches right through from September to February, March. So you see the darkest months, and it's like an exploration as much as a reflection. So basically the protagonist, and it's a real person, she has decided to give in to winter this year. I believe that she's unwell, and so she's in a period of convalescence, and she allows herself to become in tune with the winter. But as part of that, she thinks about like what it means to winter, like what is wintering as a kind of participle verb, and this idea of allowing yourself to hibernate. And she looks at the history of this, like kind of how historically, oh sorry, the door's going, but how historically we would treat winter and what's changed. Sorry, got cut off because I had to answer the door. So during this time lapse of me doing some work, I just wanted to quickly say that it's basically a combination of nature writing, a memoir, but also like history. So she's learning about the history of being in tune with winter at the same time. And there are so many interesting things about like sleep, how our sleep patterns change, and how people have traditionally celebrated winter. So one of the things she does, for example, is visit Stonehenge, and then she explores that. And I just love that kind of combination sort of writing. It kind of reminded me of Bluets, if you've read that. So now we are on to the next book, which is Teachers by Alexandra Robbins, A Year Inside America's Most Vulnerable Profession. I took this downstairs to start it, and I read about 60, 70 pages downstairs. Who's that? Can you see? Who's that? Then I chose another book because I was going to a cafe and I was in the mood for fiction as opposed to non-fiction. So I took down Cat's Eye, which is in my top 3 favourite books of all time. I love this book. I read it about 4 times and I really enjoyed rereading it whilst drinking some tea and having some chocolate cake in this cafe. I also have annotations from each of the different readings that I've done, which is always really cool to look back on. Then here I read another academic article which was cited by the one that I read this morning. I didn't read this properly though, I kind of skim read it. To finish the day, I'm going to read some more of The Teachers in Bed. I love Alexandra Robbins' work, and I will give you my full thoughts when I finished, but it's separated into months. Like all of the books that she does in this style, she follows the kind of group of people for a year, and so it's all chronological, and I've just finished August, which is the first chapter section in this book. Her writing is excellent, and I love how it's peppered with statistics, interviews. It's very engaging, and I'd recommend. I will take these out in just a second. I've only got about 15 minutes until I've got to leave for work, so while I'm eating breakfast, I will read a few pages of this, but probably only like 5 pages. I always find I'm in a bit of a rush on Wednesdays. I'm going to make my coffee. Okay, I only managed to read maybe like 3 pages of my book before I ran out of time, so I'm heading to work now. I've brought Cat's Eye with me, and I may read a little bit today, but I'm not sure about half time, so we'll just like wait and see. Maybe over my lunch break I'll manage to read something. But I hope you have a good day, and I'll read after work, and I'll see you afterwards. Earlier downstairs I read about 40 pages of this, and now before bed I'll probably read another 30-ish because I'm quite tired, but I'm really enjoying this. It's so beautifully misty this morning. I didn't manage to read anything this morning. I try and read before work because I think it sets my day up very nicely, but both today and yesterday I've been rushing and waking up slightly late, so tomorrow hopefully I'll manage to read before work. I did manage to read a few pages of Cat's Eye while I was waiting for my lift, and then when I got home I read some more of The Teachers downstairs. My mum and I just sat on the sofa and read like we had yesterday too, and this was so nice. It's just very calming after work to do. What are you reading?
Wintering.
Is it good?
Makes me want to winter.
Yes, lovely. Oh, I also had a parcel come. This is Anne of Avonlea by Ellen Montgomery, which is the second book in the Anne of Green Gables series. I have read this, but I bought it on Kindle. I'm just reading a couple of articles in this month's Philosophy Now. This is the issue from December and January, and I won't read this front to back. I will read some more of it tomorrow, hopefully. But I just read an excellent article on Plato's Cave and social media, and it's such an interesting comparison, basically saying that social media is the new Plato's Cave because inmates are tied up and they're looking at these shadows and projections and they think that they're the real thing because they've never known anything different. And in the same way, this article says that social media kind of does that, where we're seeing impressions and shadows of reality on social media because social media is curated. And just a very interesting perspective. I'd never thought of that like that before. There's a whole section on social media actually, which is interesting. So I'm going to read this one on trolls, skeptics and philosophers next. I actually did like a university essay once on the etymology of troll and like internet trolls and how it relates to the mythology of trolls, which was, yeah, interesting to think about. So I'm going to see what this says. This is the article Trolls, Skeptics and Philosophers by Rosemary Twomley, who is, usually tells you at the end, assistant professor at Queen's College. You know, it's so funny because only doing this video have I realised how sporadic my reading is. When I last checked in, I was reading The Teachers. Oh no, when I last checked in, I read just like 3 articles in that Philosophy Now magazine. But before that I was reading The Teachers, which is the main book I'm reading at the moment. But then after getting ready for bed, I pulled Vegan Propaganda by Ed Winters off my shelf, and I annotated this quite extensively at the time and highlighted my favourite passages, and I've spent the last 20 minutes just going through these marked passages and rereading them, and it only really clocked in my head that this was me reading and that I maybe might want to include this in the video like just now. And I think that's just it. It's kind of like reminding me that reading is so much more variable than maybe we sometimes think. Like a lot of the time on social media, at least, when we're sharing what we're reading, it's going to be complete novels and it's going to be complete pieces of literature. You know, saying like, oh, I read 35 pages of this book, and then the next day I read 150, and then the next day I read 50 and I finished the book. But so much of the time, like, we'll dip into books and we will read little sections and we won't complete it, and that is such a lovely kind of reading. So I'm going through this book at the moment, and yeah, just rereading the annotations. I read this like 2 or 3 years ago and I thought it was brilliant. It's basically explaining like the environmental, the ethical and health benefits of veganism, and dispelling lots of the myths around veganism that people often use to like say that veganism is a bad idea. Ed Winters, it kind of mimics the format of Ed Winters' social media content. This and also Jonathan Safran Foer's book on eating animals are both excellent if you're interested in this. Good morning. I'm actually, you can see my reflection, I'm actually up with plenty of time this morning, so I am going to go downstairs and read, and probably actually can read something this morning. I started this middle grade book last night. I'm 50 pages in. Okay, I just read another 60 pages of this. I'm on page 112, and I just want to finish getting ready for work, and then if I have time I'll read a little bit more, but it's really good. Okay, I'm back home from work and I'm gonna go like get changed. I'm quite tired today. It's like 6 o'clock, but I am gonna read some more of my book. Again, I sat in the living room with my mum to read some more of The Teachers, and I ended up finishing this. Good morning, it's Saturday and I spent the morning reading Time Travelling with a Hamster. How far am I? It's here. I have just been reading on my armchair and I've had such a lovely Saturday morning. I do really enjoy taking Saturday mornings slow, and I won't do any work until midday just to like recharge from work. So the best way to recharge is reading. I'm on page 212 of like around 400. It's obviously very fast paced because it's middle grade and I'm really enjoying it. I really like it. I would recommend it. It's also a clever premise, so I feel like it's a good one to encourage like 11 to 13-year-olds with, because it is like an unusual plot for a book. And just broadly speaking, but I feel like there is a fascination with time travel, especially with this age group, and so I can see why this was so popular. It's basically about this boy whose dad died 4 years ago, and then on his 12th birthday he received a letter from his dad saying that he has the chance to like save his life and bring him back if he uses the time machine that his dad has been building. And so the boy basically like has to travel back in time in order to save his dad. It's really, really clever, and I like how it explains like quantum physics and relativity in the book for kids. I'm enjoying this and I'm going to read some more, and it's a very pleasant way to spend a Saturday. I also, slight detour, but my mum just gave me this dress. She was getting rid of it and I absolutely love it. It's got like a dropped waist belt. It's so incredibly long that I do have to wear like platform shoes with it because I'm quite short. But I feel like this is also such a perfect dress for work, and I will be wearing this to work. But I was going to show you this. So The Adolescent by Dostoevsky just arrived yesterday, and it's also not as thick as I was expecting it to be. I thought it would be longer. I'm so looking forward to reading this, and as soon as I finish that middle grade book I'm going to get started on this. I'm genuinely so excited. Earlier this week I was reading Cat's Eye by Margaret Atwood. My plan is not to finish this book. I prefer this first half of this book anyway. I'm on page 60 and I read the first 60 pages continuously. I will kind of keep on dipping into this, but I'm not planning on finishing it. I do a lot of that and I do enjoy like dipping into favourite books and reading favourite passages and just reflecting on marked passages again. And that's kind of what I'm doing with this book, because as I say, the second half isn't, in my opinion, like it's really excellent, like it is wonderful, but I prefer the first half. And so if I'm rereading and just rereading for pleasure, then I'm obviously going to read my favourite passages, and I won't finish this reread this week because I'm just dipping into it as and when I want to, but I'll probably read like the first half the whole way through, and then there are lots of marked passages where I've just like highlighted my favourite pages, and so I'll kind of go through the book and I'll just read my favourite passages and pages again for the rest of the book. Not a typical way to read, but when you're rereading, I feel like that's so fine. That's not a form of rereading that I hear a lot of people talking about, and yet it's definitely like one of my favourite ways to reread. It's in the same way that if you've got a favourite book, you might pick it up and reread your favourite chapter quite frequently, which is what I do with The Little Princess. I'll just pick it up and just read like one of the 5 chapters that I particularly enjoy. I really love growing very familiar with a particular book and like knowing your favourite parts inside out. So yeah, I'm gonna read some more of this. My family is also driving to see some family this evening for a dinner, and so we'll be in the car for probably about like 4 hours today, and so I'll probably save some of this because this is more of a car book, and the Dostoevsky is probably more of a home book, like wanting to sit down with pen and paper. So I don't know how my reading's going to go today, but I definitely want to read at least another 50 pages because it's really good. Okay, I'm going to stop here so that I can finish the rest in the car later. Oh, there are blankets everywhere here. I'm just going to give you a quick library book haul for this week. So I took out Time Travelling with a Hamster, which I've already spoken to you about. And then I've taken out 2 Patrick Ness books. So I've got The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness, and also Burn by Patrick Ness. So then this is later in the car. It ended up being about 3.5 hours total there and back, and thankfully I don't get travel sick. I did start to get kind of nauseous for about like an hour total of the trip, so I didn't read then, but I'm very lucky in that I don't tend to get car sick. So I finished reading Time Travelling with a Hamster on the way there, and then on the way back I started the Dostoevsky. I didn't manage to read much of this. It was quite hard to focus on it in the car, as I predicted, and so I only read the first chapter, which is in like 8 parts, I think. I just really wish that I brought a notepad and pen and that I could take notes, because there were lots of quotes that I really liked. The next morning, just to start the Sunday off on the right foot, I read a couple of pages of The Adolescent in Bed, and then I didn't really read for the whole of Sunday, which is really unusual because I do usually think of Sunday as a reading day. So I'm filming this much later, just before I'm about to go to bed. It's nearly 10 o'clock and I haven't read all day. Usually I would read on a Sunday, so it's strange that I haven't actually, but I'm going to read now before bed because I can never actually sleep if I don't read. I'm reading The Adolescent by Dostoevsky. Actually this morning I read, didn't I? I'm partway through chapter 2 at the moment and I'm kind of enjoying it so far, but it's not like striking me in the same way as his other books have, so I'm hoping that it gets better, and I'm sure I'll enjoy it as I start to know the characters more. But I'll let you know tomorrow how much of this I read, but this is Sunday, so the last day of this video. But anyway, that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. This is a really fun video to film, and I've never done something like this before, so let me know if you liked it, and then maybe I can do another one. But I hope that you have more than just a productive week.